It is an absolutely gorgeous Friday to be riding motorcycles in the Ozarks. Stopped here just north of Shell Knob, Missouri at an overlook. Plan is to head on down to through Eureka Springs, have some lunch, then work my way on down Highway 23, get down through the Pig Trail, and end up in Paris, Arkansas, and then go to the top of Magazine Mountain. So, the whole weekend's supposed to be rainy, so I took Friday off, and we're going to have a good time. Bike has been performing flawlessly as usual. It's quickly becoming my all-time favorite street bike. Guy just stopped in here with a C4 Corvette, so I got to talk to him for a little bit. That was a good time. So, about ready to hit the road again. Well, I made it to Huntsville, Arkansas. Not making real good time, but I never do on a motorcycle. Had to stop and get a drink because I'm getting sleepy. If anybody else gets sleepy on a motorcycle, most people think that's crazy, but I could fall asleep on a bike really easy. So, get down to the Big Trail. I'm gonna break out some new camera equipment, some new mounts, see if I can get some good video down there. I'm getting closer. It's gonna be a 500 or 600 mile day, so no telling what time I'll get home tonight. Well, we've officially made it to the Pig Trail. Here's one of the many scenic overlooks down here in Arkansas. Well, I have made it to Paris, and no trip to Paris would be complete without a stop at the Eiffel Tower, right? Nice little lake down here before you get to the top of Magazine. I'm about 15 miles from the summit, somewhere over there. And I'm gonna get home seriously late. Well, the part you just watched about me stopping at the lake was the last good part of my ride. I stopped there, and the ride was Friday. This is Sunday. I haven't finished the video before now, but I left the lake. Bike had been running perfect all day. I left the lake, started up the mountain, and I hadn't drove 2 miles since I left the lake, and all of a sudden we've got check engine light and battery light flashing, or had come on the instrument cluster. So I'm like, oh shit, because I'm a long way from home. If I keep going up the mountain, there's nothing at the top of the mountain except for the lodge, campground, stuff like that. You go over the mountain to the other side, there's just a little town called Havana. I don't even think they have a gas station, so it's like I just turned around in the middle of the road and started back. Got back down to Paris, stopped at a Casey's to get gas, and did a crash course on how to check the diagnostic trouble codes on the instrument cluster, and found out that, like I figured, since the battery light was on, had low voltage. So I'm like, I'm 260 miles away from home at this point. And I'm like, well, it was still running. It's like, let's head home, see how far we can get. I'm figuring the battery's gonna die. Before I did that, I checked my stator wires, going to the voltage regulator, make sure I didn't have a bad connection there. Because I had actually had the voltage regulator off a few days before to give it a coat of paint because it was all chipped up from road rocks. So I take off from there, fires it up. It's a little sluggish turning over. So it's like, I am getting low on juice. But when I took off from there, I didn't have any more lights. I mean, it didn't have any more trouble lights on the instrument cluster. So I'm like, well, maybe it was the stator wire. So I make it probably another 20 miles north, come to a little town, have to stop at a stoplight in town, and when I stop, then the lights come back on. So it's like, it was charging, just not charging, at idle speed. So I keep driving, make it up through the Pig Trail, get up and stop again, thinking, because as I was driving along, I was thinking, well, maybe this drawer is annoying. I stop, and the one thing I didn't check was the actual battery cable connection. So I stop on a little pull off on the road. I check those. Everything's tight. Go to start it up again. It doesn't have enough power to crank it over. So I was like, it was running just fine till I stopped here. So I was like, oh, and I forgot the best part here. As I'm going to check the battery cables, I don't carry a lot of tools on the bike like I do my dual sports, because generally I don't have that much trouble with street bikes. So I had a Leatherman tool, and I'm trying to take the bolt out of the strap that holds the battery in. Well, I can't quite get on it. So I'm looking there, and I'm thinking about the charging system. I'm not thinking about anything else. Why this thing is not charging. So I get in there, and I'm like, the reason I can't get on this is because this drain hose from the airbox is in the way. Now, think about that for a second. So I'm like, well, hell, I'll just pull off this drain hose, and I can get in there and get it. So I pull this hose off, and freaking oil starts going everywhere. And my mind is like, why is my airbox full of oil? It's like, oh shit, that's the oil tank. And I'm jamming that hose back up on there. If you've ever rode dirt bikes, that oil tank looks exactly like an airbox on a dirt bike. And that feed hose that comes off the bottom, or I think it may be a return hose. Either way, that hose that comes off the bottom that's right there by the battery looks exactly like the drain line for an airbox. And I was like, man, I need to get home. And of course, I'm tired and hungry because I had planned on having dinner up there at the lodge on top of Magazine Mountain. So I got the oil plugged back up. Didn't lose much oil, but it was just like, oh shit. So I get that fixed. Won't start, but guy came by. I was like, hey, you got some jumper cables? Hooked some jumper cables on, fired it up. Got going, no problem. I rode, made it all the way back up into Missouri. I've made it like 116 miles, I think, when I'd stopped again for gas. And I ended up killing it at the gas station, which was stupid. It was still running fine, but this was stupid on my part. But I'm trying to get the kickstand down. And like I say, I'm tired. It's getting late. It's dark at this point. And I reached down to, I'm just going to leave it open next time. I reached down to put the kickstand out and managed to miss it the first time and then hit the shifter and knocked it into gear. And at this point, there is no juice left whatsoever. It won't even begin to hardly click, nothing. So I was just like, I'm done. My daughter knew that I was having trouble. She'd hooked the trailer up. She was heading down anyway. She was like 40 minutes away. So it's like, we're just going to wait and she'll pick me up. We did that, got home like 1, 2 in the morning. And next day I pulled the battery out, have it checked, because I'm thinking maybe it's just the battery, because it had been charging enough to keep the bike running. But took the battery up, it had a dead cell. So definitely have a problem with the battery. So I took the battery, got a new battery, put it in there, fired the bike back up, and nope, she's still not charging. I mean, you could rev it up, it was staying right at battery voltage. There was no charge. So I'm going to stop, leave that drawer open. I'm going to stop and go over and show you what I found. I knew that it was probably had voltage regulator issues, but I also, the primary on that bike is noisy. It's rattly. And I've drained the oil out to make sure there wasn't any metal in it or anything. Everything looked good, so I hadn't worried about it too much, but I didn't like the way it sounded. So it's like, we're going to pull this off. We're going to check the stator. We're going to look at everything. So let me go show you what I found. Check out this crispy critter. All but 4 poles on that thing are fried. Fried badly. So I knew I had trouble just as soon as I started draining the oil and taking the cover off. It's like it just smelled like burnt electronics. And obviously there's a good reason for that. So we have a new stator coming, new voltage regulator. We'll just change everything. Got a new battery. Have everything in the charging system new. Hopefully this won't happen again, because this still is my all-time favorite bike. I love it, so not too worried about fixing it. I would just as soon not happen again. The other thing, told you it rattled. Well, I found the rattle. Let's go look at that. And this is your clutch basket out of that. And check this out. This thing has this part here is what attaches your clutch disc and gauge here. Transmits the pressure or the power through the clutch disc to the center hub that goes to your transmission. Well, outside here where the chain goes is what transmits the power to this. And this is a multi-piece setup that has a bunch of damper springs in it. Kind of like a clutch on a car. Well, pretty much exactly like a clutch on a car. Except that these frickin' springs, there is only one of them that's not just flopping all over the place. And I can't really see down in there, but I assume the spring is probably busted. Because this one here is like it should be. Solid against both sides. To where when it pivots, it compresses the spring and then springs back. So, that's where the rattle's coming from. And these also, the multi-pieces are held together with 3 rivets. They have been known to come apart. So, the solution, and what most of the racers did back when they were racing these, is they change it to an XL clutch basket that doesn't have the springs. Why in the hell they put the springs in these? Some people think this is a leftover Buell part they had. And it may be. I've never had to have the clutch part on a Buell, but that kind of makes sense. So what I'm going to do is drill these rivets out. Since there's no chance of this going back together as is, I'm going to drill the rivets out, take it apart, and see if I can make it solid and put it back together as is. If I can't do anything with that, then we'll get all the parts to do an XL clutch conversion and just be done with it. Put the solid hub in there, because there's really no reason to have those. No good reason, at least, and especially since the racers could get by without it. It was even an AMA bulletin. It's like, if you're racing one of these, you can do all of this clutch mod and still race in the stock class or whatever the heck it is. But there's my rattle. I get that fixed one way or the other. Should be all good on everything on the bike, but that's annoying. But it's like anything else. If I find something annoying on something I like, I just fix it to where it's not annoying anymore. So I'll make a separate video if I can do anything with this, but that's the end of my magazine mountain trip. Never did make it to the summit, so I'm going to have to try again as soon as I get this all back together. Sorry I'm a little greasy, but we're also in the process of putting a new transmission in my Yukon there. So just wanted to finish this video while that stuff is still in my head. Till next time.